Tund Adebayo was born in Elisha, a quiet town in Osun State. Life was simple until tragedy struck. He lost both of his parents before he turned 16. With nowhere else to go, he was sent to live with his mother's elder sister, Aunt Ronk. She was known across the neighborhood, not for kindness, but for her loud mouth and sharp tongue. From the moment Tund stepped into her house, she reminded him that he wasn't her child. "You're here because I have a good heart," she would say. Tund never talked back. He was soft-spoken, always in his books, always trying to stay out of the way. But Aunt Ronk didn't see his quietness as respect. She saw it as weakness. At every chance, she pointed it out to others. "That boy dey just carry face like who dem offend," she'd say, laughing with neighbors. In truth, Tund was grieving, but no one really asked. She gave him a mat in the corner of her living room. No privacy. No comfort. Just rules. He swept the compound, washed clothes, cooked food, and still got insulted daily. When visitors came, she exaggerated how she was feeding another woman's child, as if she were raising a beggar. Yet Tund never complained. He pushed through secondary school with good grades, often reading by candlelight when everyone else had gone to bed. No enqueriment, no pras. Just cold meals and louder insults. But he kept going. People in the area barely noticed him. He had no fine clothes, no phone, no friends, just dreams he kept buried inside. By the time he finished university and prepared to leave for Lagos, Aunt Ronk didn't even say goodbye. She only warned him, "Don't go and disgrace me out there." Tund simply nodded, packed his small bag, and left without a fuss. He didn't know what was waiting for him in Lagos, but deep down he made a silent promise to himself. One day he would make it, and when he did, even Elisha would hear about it. When Tund moved to Lagos after university, life hit him hard. The city was loud, fast, and unforgiving. He didn't know many people, had no stable job and no real plan, just hope. He picked up small jobs to survive, like helping vendors at markets, doing delivery runs at night, and sometimes cleaning office spaces. Some days he only ate once, maybe bread and sachet water. He slept in church hostels when they had space, sometimes on benches at bus stops when they didn't. But he didn't tell anyone. He wanted to figure things out quietly. Back in Elisha, Aunt Ronk was doing the opposite. She told everyone who cared to listen that Tund had failed in Lagos. "That boy no serious," she'd say at the market while buying tomatoes. "He just day waste time. Can't even hold one job." She painted a picture of shame. Her voice spread the news like wildfire, first to the hair salon, then to Sunday service, then to neighbors gathered under mango trees. "He's jobless," she shouted one morning at church. When someone asked how Tund was doing, people believed her. After all, no one heard from Tund. He wasn't calling, wasn't posting pictures, wasn't sending money. Silence gave her story power. Even cousins in the city ignored his calls because of what they heard. The aunt who was supposed to defend him became the loudest one, tearing him down. "He went to Lagos to disgrace us," she'd say with a smirk. "Always walking like he knows everything, now see him. Broke and hiding." But Tund wasn't hiding. He was just trying to survive, to build something from nothing. Every day he told himself to hold on a little longer. But the gossip in Elisha kept growing, until it became the only thing people knew about him. In their minds, he was the boy who failed in Lagos. A shame, a disappointment, and all of it was built on a lie, one loud woman's version of a story she never took time to understand. Auntie Ronk didn't just spread gossip. She turned it into her personal mission to destroy Tund's name. Anytime someone brought him up, she had something negative to say. "That boy is too proud to work," she'd spit, rolling her eyes. "He thinks he's better than everyone." She made it sound like Tund was sitting in Lagos doing nothing, as if he had chosen to suffer. And the sad part? People listened. She spoke with so much confidence, like she knew exactly what he was doing in the city. She told his cousins not to pick his calls. "What does he want now?" she asked one of them. "If he had anything good to say, we'd have heard it." Slowly, one by one, his own blood started to ignore him. No returned calls. No replies to messages. He became a ghost to the people who once called him family. And Auntie Ronk loved it that way. It gave her control over the story. When Christmas came and Tund didn't return to Elisha, people asked where he was. Aunt Ronk laughed loudly and said, "Shame no day let him come home." She claimed he couldn't show his face because he had failed in life. Which man hides during Christmas if he's doing well? She'd ask, folding her arms. Her words carried weight. In the village, older women nodded in agreement. Younger ones whispered and judged. Even people who didn't know Tund personally began to speak about him like they did. She never told anyone about his struggles or how hard he was trying. She never said he called to check in or that he once sent a text on her birthday. Instead, she made it look like he vanished in disgrace. And because no one had heard directly from him, her lies became truth. In Alatia, Tund wasn't seen as a man trying to survive in a tough city. He was branded a failure. And the person who put that label on him was the very woman who once claimed to love him. Tund was determined to change his story, no matter how hard it got. Every morning, he woke up in a crowded room, sometimes sharing floor space with strangers, and walked to the nearest cyber cafe with his small jotter of job listings. He applied for everything: marketing assistant, admin staff, delivery coordinator, anything with a salary. In 3 months, he sent out over 200 applications. No calls. No emails. Nothing. Instead of giving up, he found free YouTube tutorials on graphic design. He watched them in public cafes where the internet lagged and the noise never stopped. He didn't have a laptop, so he borrowed time on old ones at cyber cafes or begged for a few minutes on a friend's broken system. He practiced using outdated software and saved designs on flash drives he couldn't afford to lose. When he felt ready, he started offering his services for free. He'd walk into small shops, ask if they needed a flyer, a business logo, or a social media post. Most people ignored him. Some laughed. A few let him try. He worked overnight just to send a design by morning, hoping it would lead to something. He sent emails to agencies, startups, NGOs, sometimes just asking for a chance to learn, not even for pay. "I'll intern for free," he wrote more times than he could count. Still silence. His phone remained dry, his inbox cold. He refreshed his email over and over, praying to see one reply, even a rejection. But nothing came. Days passed, then weeks, then months. The only thing that grew was his frustration. He started to wonder if anyone was reading his messages at all. He poured effort into everything, but it felt like shouting into an empty room. Yet, even in the silence, he didn't stop. He couldn't. He told himself, "If no one opens the door, I'll find a window." That was the fire that kept him going when everything around him screamed, "Quit." Tund ended up in a cramped one-room apartment in the back of a compound, deep inside a noisy part of Lagos. He shared the space with 4 other young men, all trying to survive the city. There was barely room to stretch, the fan hardly worked, and when it rained, the walls leaked. They slept in shifts, some on the bed, some on the floor, some by the door. Privacy didn't exist, but nobody complained. They were all broke, all chasing hope. To survive, Tund started selling wristbands he bought in bulk from a street market. He'd walk from shop to shop under the hot sun, trying to convince people to buy. Some days he sold a few. Most days he sold none. When that didn't bring enough money, he joined a delivery group and started doing late-night dispatch jobs, riding through dangerous streets just to make enough for the next day's meal. And those meals? Mostly bread and beans. It was the cheapest combo he could afford. Sometimes he ate the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if there was even enough to go around. But he never begged. He never went home. He didn't want anyone to see his struggle, especially not the woman who had already written him off. Every night, after the noise died down and the room was quiet, Tund would sit by the small window, stare out at the city lights, and whisper to himself, "One day, my story will be worth telling." That sentence became his fuel. It reminded him that this pain wasn't permanent, that this struggle was just the middle, not the end. Even when his body was tired and his account was empty, his mind stayed fixed on the future. He knew he wasn't where he wanted to be, but he also knew he wasn't going to stop until he got there. Bread and beans was just a phase, one he would never forget. One night, around 2 a.m., Tund came across a job post from a startup in Ghana. They needed someone to design a pitch deck for their investors. It wasn't a big job, but something about it felt different. He stayed up till morning, crafted a proposal, attached samples he had done for free, and sent it off with a simple message, "I'd love to help. I'll give it my best." By 9 a.m., he got a reply. "Can we talk today?" That one line changed everything. They spoke over Zoom. The founder was impressed by Tun's story, his hunger, and his honesty. He gave him a small task, and Tund delivered it within 24 hours. Clean, bold designs, sharp messaging, no fluff. The startup loved it. They gave him more tasks, then bigger ones. Within a month, they hired him as their remote creative lead. It wasn't a dream job, but it was the door he had been knocking on for years. With money finally coming in, Tund rented a small apartment. He bought a second-hand laptop that actually worked. He no longer needed cyber cafes. He worked day and night, learning, improving, growing. The startup flew him to Accra for a product launch, then to Nairobi for a tech expo, then to London for a global design conference. In every city, Tund showed up humble, focused, and ready. His work didn't go unnoticed. One of his pitch decks got featured in a TechCrunch article. It was shared across LinkedIn, reposted by founders, and even used as a case study in startup communities. Suddenly, people were reaching out to him, not the other way around. Tund went from begging for free gigs to turning down offers. He stayed grateful but never forgot where he came from. That 2 a.m. proposal? It was the crack in the wall that let the light in. And from that moment on, his story stopped being about survival. It became about building something that would last. 5 years after leaving Alasia with nothing but a bag and a dream, Tund's phone rang on a quiet Tuesday morning. It was an unknown number from back home. He picked it up, not expecting much. The voice on the other end was from the state government's youth development office. They had seen his work online, read about his journey, and wanted him to speak at an upcoming Youth Innovation Summit. "You're the kind of story young people need to hear," the woman said. Tund paused, smiled, and said, "Thank you. I'll be there." Just a week later, another call came. This time, it was his cousin Maid. They hadn't spoken in years. "Bro, I'm getting married next month," Maid said. "And honestly, everyone keeps asking if you'll come home. Even Aunt Ronk." Tund laughed quietly, felt surreal. For years, they had all ignored his calls, cut him off, treated him like a ghost. Now they were waiting for his return. He didn't feel bitterness, just calm. He had changed, grown, healed. The Tund they had buried in gossip was long gone. What remained was a man who had fought for his future and won. He looked out the window of his apartment, now in London, and thought about that small town he hadn't seen in 5 years. The dusty roads, the old neighbors, the woman who once told the whole village he was a failure. He hadn't planned to return. Not like this. But now, with his name on tech blogs, with clients from 4 countries, and a voice that young people wanted to hear, he knew it was time. Not to prove anything, not to boast, but to show what quiet resilience could become. Tund took a deep breath and replied, "Yes, I'm coming." Not as the boy they once pitied, but as the man no one saw coming. The morning of the wedding arrived, and Alasia was buzzing. The village square was filled with people dressed in colorful ankara, laughing and greeting one another. Canopies lined the streets, music played from loudspeakers, and the smell of jollof rice and fried meat filled the air. It was one of those days where everyone came out to celebrate, not just the couple, but the chance to gather, dance, and talk. Auntie Ronk sat under a tree near the main entrance, as usual. She wore her finest lace and gold earrings, holding a plastic fan in one hand and a bottle of malt in the other. She gossiped with a group of women, her voice loud, as always. "You know how these boys are," she said, shaking her head. "They disappear and only return when they smell food." Then, a deep rumble cut through the music. Engines. Loud, smooth, powerful. Everyone turned. The drummers stopped. Children ran toward the sound. 3 black SUVs slowly entered through the narrow village road, followed by a smaller car with a camera mounted on it. People stood on tiptoe to see what was going on. "Is the governor coming?" someone whispered. "Maybe a celebrity?" another added. The cars came to a stop right in front of the main canopy. Doors opened. Tund stepped out. He wore a white agbada with silver embroidery, dark sunglasses, and calm confidence. His beard was neat, his steps firm. Behind him, assistants moved quickly, and a banner was being set up. It read, "Tund Adebayo, Creative Director, Vision Tech Global." Gasps filled the air. Mouths opened. Eyes widened. People couldn't believe it. Some clapped without thinking. Others just stared. The boy they once ignored, laughed at, and called a failure had returned, differently. Auntie Ronk froze. Her fan dropped. Her eyes followed him as he walked past, greeting elders with respect but not stopping for anyone's approval. Tund was back, and the whole village knew they had been wrong. The loud sound of engines shook the quiet road leading into Alatia. 3 black SUVs rolled slowly through the village gate, shiny and spotless, followed closely by a van with a camera crew inside. The music at the wedding stopped. Conversations paused. Every head turned to see what was happening. Children ran alongside the convoy, shouting and pointing. The cars moved smoothly through the crowd, their tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. Whispers filled the air. "Is it the governor?" someone asked. "Maybe it's one of those musicians," another guessed. No one knew for sure, but the presence was powerful. It wasn't normal for such cars to drive into their humble village. People rushed toward the square. Market women left their stalls. Old men stood with their walking sticks trying to catch a glimpse. Then one of the SUV doors opened. A tall man stepped out, dressed in a spotless white agbada with silver details shining under the sun. His face was calm, his step steady. A pair of dark sunglasses covered his eyes, but everyone knew that face. They had seen it before years ago, but not like this. It was Tund. Behind him, a banner was placed quickly by 2 young assistants. It read, "Tund Adebayo, Creative Director, Vision Tech Global." The crowd froze. Some gasped loudly. Others put hands on their heads. People who once joined in gossip now stared in silence, not sure what to say. A few phones came out, trying to capture the moment. Auntie Ronk stood near the tree, speechless. Her mouth was slightly open, the fan in her hand now still. She watched as Tund greeted a few elders with a slight bow, offering calm smiles but not too many words. The camera crew followed his every step. It wasn't just the cars, the clothes, or the cameras. It was the way he walked, like someone who had nothing to prove but everything to show. Alatia had waited years to see him, and now that he was here, they knew they weren't looking at the same boy. They were looking at a man. After the wedding celebration ended and the music faded, the crowd gathered under the main canopy for the final program. The MC stepped up and announced that someone special was going to speak. All eyes turned to Tund. He stood slowly, walked to the front, and took the microphone. The same boy they once ignored now stood with quiet confidence, dressed in his agbada, standing tall before the people who once believed the worst about him. He looked around, took a breath, and began. "5 years ago, many of you were told I failed," he said. "You were told I was hiding in Lagos, jobless, ashamed, wasting my life. But I wasn't failing. I was building, quietly, painfully, but with purpose." His voice was steady. The crowd was silent, listening to every word. No one moved. Even children stopped playing. He turned slightly and looked straight at Auntie Ronk. Their eyes met. He continued, "Auntie, you told people I was too proud to work. You told my cousins not to answer my calls. You said shame wouldn't let me come home. But I wasn't ashamed. I was just trying to survive." The crowd turned to look at her. She froze, her face blank. Tund then smiled softly and said, "You tried to bury me with shame, but God used it as fertilizer." There was a pause. Then a single tear dropped from someone in the crowd. Then another. People looked down, some nodding, others wiping their eyes. Tund stepped back from the mic. Silence. Then clapping. Then a standing ovation. Even some of those who once whispered behind his back now clapped with both hands, tears in their eyes. They had never seen anything like this. A boy they counted out, returning with grace, power, and forgiveness. From that day, the gossip in Alatia slowed down. People began thinking before they spoke. They remembered Tund's story, not just the success, but the struggle behind it. And in quiet corners of the village, when someone was mocked or judged, someone else would say, "Be careful. You never know who you're